Thunder Lips.
All right.
Ba ba ba. Ba ba ba. Thunder
Number
Lips.
4.
Ba ba ba. Ba ba ba.
Gonna beat Russia.
Ba da ba ba da ba da. Ba ba.
I don't have anything else.
That's it. That's all I got.
All right. So if you didn't know, Kyle, what are we talking about today?
Rocky 4,
Rocky
baby.
4, the documentary / action film.
Documentary. What a claim.
So we're gonna maybe be taking a little bit of a break from the history part of this. This might be mostly Hollywood today.
This is like 85% Hollywood, but I'm here for it.
That's fine. I'm here for it too, man.
There's
I love
Cold
this
War.
movie.
There's Cold War in it. Like,
Yeah.
you know, there's
Right.
ideas of history in it. So
I mean, how can you not love this movie? Let's just be honest. How can you not love it? All right, so this was released in 1985. It is currently sitting at a 40% critic rating, a 79% audience rating. In my opinion, neither of those are high enough. And it is at a 6.9 nice on IMDb.
nice.
Written and directed by none other than Sylvester Stallone himself. So he had written all of them. He wrote one, but did not direct it. And then he wrote and directed 2, 3, and 4 at this point.
Yeah, he did.
A couple little facts before we kind of get into it here. Sylvester Stallone started preparing for it during First Blood Part 2, which is Rambo, which is arguably what a lot of people say is like his most ripped physique.
He's pretty jacked.
Is
Dude.
between Rambo 2 and Rocky 4 is like, this is prime Sylvester Stallone.
Dude's
and
pretty
his like,
dude's pretty freaky jacked.
yeah.
Like,
So he was working out with Franco Columbu, who is best known to be he's a professional bodybuilder in the 70s and 80s, and he is Arnold Schwarzenegger's training partner. It's kind of funny because Franco must have been in kind of a unique position because Franco is considered Arnold's best friend, and he trained Sylvester Stallone, and at this time, Arnold and Stallone hated each other
yes, they did.
because they're the two biggest rivals. So I wonder how many awkward positions Franco got put in because of their relationships.
I also think it must have been awkward because in terms of a bodybuilding perspective, like Arnold Schwarzenegger is just a much bigger human than Sylvester Stallone. So I hope there weren't any like, what did Arnold lift this week questions, because he just would have constantly been disappointed.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
sure.
you couldn't. So when we start this movie, it is going to be the audio from the fight
With
that
Clubber
ended,
Lang.
Yeah, with Clubber Lang that ended Rocky 3. You've got Apollo Creed in his corner. Rocky's taking some jabs. He's getting hit. He says, "You're not so bad. You're not so bad."
As he's just getting pummeled in
right.
like, the boxing ring.
And we should mention here that there is now a director's cut of Rocky 4. It's called Rocky versus Drago. It is Sylvester Stallone's kind of project during quarantine. He re-edited Rocky 4, cut out, I think it's 38 minutes of footage, and replaced it with either alternate takes or deleted scenes. So a couple of the main things, the main differences, because I don't want to do a side-by-side comparison this entire podcast. So the main differences are a few of the scenes in the beginning are deleted. There is no robot in the Rocky versus Drago
That's a good call,
cut.
honestly.
Good call. Good call.
That's a good choice.
It's a continuous joke that just doesn't land.
Yeah.
I think the fight scenes are a little bit longer.
Also a good choice.
Yes. And there,
These
like I
are-
said,
These are weirdly short boxing scenes for a Rocky movie. Like, when you watch it,
You
they're
know-
good, but you're like, this is...
yeah, but I think this, I don't know, I would argue that this is the perfect amount. I feel like this is where they got down the formula perfectly. They executed it perfectly. Rocky 3, I would argue, has the worst boxing scenes.
Yes, that 100%. Yeah.
But
the Hulk Hogan scene is fun in Rocky 3.
I like the Hulk Hogan scene. But anyways,
Thunder Lips.
So there are some differences in the intro. It actually shows the fight, but in the original cut, which is what we'll be talking about today, it's just the audio, and then it cuts to the fight like right at the very end of it. And you have two boxing gloves. You have one with a American flag and one with a Soviet flag, and they're going to collide. And right as they collide and explode, if you look closely, you see the Soviet glove falls slightly. It's just a little touch that if you've watched this movie as many times as I have,
so
you can kind of tell.
Too many times.
Okay, so in this timeline, and this is something again I hadn't really noticed. I think in this timeline, Rocky is returning home from the fight with Apollo at the start of this movie, when he like comes home and his son's recording him.
Yeah, the fake fight they had where they're like, who's actually better in the boxing ring? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if you go by the Creed movies, Stallone or Rocky tells Creed, oh man, I'm blanking on his first name, Adonis, yeah.
Michael B. Jordan. He tells Michael B. Jordan.
He tells Michael B. Jordan that Apollo Creed won, that his dad beat him in that third fight.
And that Apollo Creed is the best fighter that Rocky has ever seen.
Right.
Like,
we have a birthday and we have an anniversary. We're going to knock him out real quick. And then we meet Ivan Drago. So let's go ahead. Let's get the character development out of the way. If you didn't know who this guy is, he's a family man. He's got a crappy little brother-in-law that doesn't do anything. But he's useless. He's useless, but he's lovable, I guess. But anyways, then we're going to meet our antagonist, Ivan freaking Drago.
Ivan Drago.
Played by Dolph Lundgren.
Drago
apparently beat out 5,000 other people who auditioned to play opposite of Rocky.
Because he's the perfect choice. I mean, the dude's a refrigerator with legs.
Yes, he is a absolute specimen. He looks like, and they kind of play into this in the film. They're like, he's the perfect, he is evolution. He's the next step in evolution. It's like, the dude looks like he is. He looks like he was made in a lab.
A little bit.
He looks like if you could create a Sims person and you just matched out all of their attributes.
Like in Rocky Horror Picture Show, where Frankenfurter makes the perfect human, they should superimpose Dolph Lundgren into a new edit of that.
Dolph Lundgren would eat that guy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so Drago's wife, played by Bridget Nielsen, would later marry Sylvester Stallone.
Oh.
Fun fact. Which is her second of 4 marriages. I'm not judging.
Nice.
I'm not judging.
I'm judging.
I'm just pointing it out.
I'm judging a little bit. Like, come on, guys.
They were together for 19 months.
Wow.
Which included their filming of 1986's Cobra, which is also a fantastic film in all of the wrong ways.
Oh, Sly, what are you doing, man?
Fun fact, she's 6'1".
And he's like, what, 5'9"?
Sly, he's 5'10".
5'10".
But in the movie, it's mentioned that she is a gold medal swimmer, like a gold medal winner in swimming. Could you imagine their children?
Just units, just absolute units of humans.
Bro, they would be the next step in evolution, man. Those kids would be able to do anything.
Be like fashionably tall and have super endurance.
So Apollo Creed, getting back to the movie now. So Apollo Creed is going to see that Drago has entered into American boxing. He's in his pool. He's looking jacked. He's looking like he's definitely not 5 years retired, but apparently he is.
Evidently.
So they're going to show the high-tech training facility and demonstrate that Drago averages 1,850 PSI.
And, this high-tech training facility has just a little bit of Death Star 2 in it.
Dude, it does!
There's no way. Like, this isn't... Even by 80s tech, this isn't real.
This is 1980s. How many lights can we put on things?
Yeah. How many useless strobe lights?
There's a guy sitting in front of a board that has like 10,000 buttons. None of them are labeled. How does he know? How does he know?
And they glow too. I think that's the thing that always kills me with like 80s tech. And that's like, yeah, that is what 80s tech looked like. But why? Like, why did everything have to glow?
I don't know, man. If it doesn't have a light behind it, can you imagine how many light bulbs had to
How
be
do I
replaced?
know it's working if the light's not on? Like, come on.
And where did all these things go? They show up in the 80s and then you never see them again.
It's like robots. Like, we had functional robots in the 80s. What happened? Where'd they go?
What did they have to be replaced?
Unrelated history fact, my dad worked for Coca-Cola back in the day, and they had a little like Coca-Cola robot that they drove around in the 80s, and he got to drive it a couple times. And he was like, that was peak human evolution right there.
Did it have a CD player on it?
I don't know.
Or cassette? It may have been cassette at that time.
Maybe.
There's a mention here of the Soviets using anabolic steroids, and it visibly irks Drago's wife and his manager. I think it's interesting because Dolph Lundgren has admitted to using steroids.
Yeah.
Prior to taking this or before this role, and so is Sylvester Stallone. So they're both juiced.
Yeah. That's a fun little history point, though, because that is a thing that did happen. And everybody knew it because Soviet athletes for the 80s, especially, are just inhumanly good at what they're doing. And everybody's like, you're so obviously doping your athletes. The Soviet Union's like, no, we're not. We're just that good at training. And then in 2016, documents from the Russian government were leaked that proved that, yes, the Soviet Union not only doped their athletes, they had an actual scheduled doping regimen for Olympic Games.
Wow. Okay,
like,
so
they not only doped them, they professionally doped them.
So it was like prescribed.
Yeah, like they had but I mean, things that you would make you ineligible for the games. And then there are also theories that Soviets planted sympathetic guys or gals into the Olympic Games as the drug testers to fudge the results so that they wouldn't be found out. Which would make sense because how else did you get all of these doped AF athletes into the Olympic Games and nobody noticed?
Very rarely does natural beat enhanced.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a reason we call it enhanced.
Right. I mean, as much as I love the human spirit and a strong work ethic, now if a person's not taking steroids and they work really hard and they go up against somebody in any sport and they go up against somebody who doesn't work hard and take steroids, yeah, they have a good chance. But if you take steroids and
if
you're
already
hard,
Dolph Lundgren and then you add steroids to Dolph Lundgren,
and you don't really need steroids to beat 99% of the human race, and then you're like, but I'm going to face the one person who might be able to beat me. Yeah, you probably need to take steroids, and you're going to be unstoppable. We'll get to the stats here in a little bit whenever they go for their final fight. It wouldn't have been pretty.
No, it would have been so bad.
It wouldn't have been pretty for Stallone. I love Stallone,
Rocky.
but yeah, it wouldn't have been great for him.
Oh, Rocco.
Apollo Creed's going to initiate the fight. He said, and they say, at this point in your life, which is going to kind of mimic, interesting enough, a few things. We're going to kind of get a scene here, which I almost feel like we have a mini movie in the first 45 to 50 minutes of this, where this is Creed's movie at the start. Yeah. And this kind of carries over from Rocky 3. We talked about this a little bit outside of the podcast about how Apollo Creed really carried Rocky 3. Because Apollo Creed, if you imagine Rocky 3 happening and Mickey doesn't die, and Mickey trains Rocky, and Rocky goes in after getting his butt kicked in the first fight and wins the second fight.
Rocky loses again.
Rocky just loses again. No, but I mean, if they made the movie to where it was like, okay, he's still got the same trainer, like it would have been bottom of the barrel. What makes Rocky 3 so much better is Apollo Creed's character, and this bleeds over to where almost if you took like the second half of Rocky 3 and the first half of Rocky 4, you could have an Apollo Creed movie. Because you have him, first off, he's in better physical shape than Rocky is.
Yeah, he is.
And then So he trains Rocky for this fight. Rocky wins. Now he's got to fight, and everyone's telling him you can't do it, and he's going to go into this fight anyways. That, if you took those two parts of those two movies, and that would be a great movie there. But anyways, moving forward, my favorite scene here, which almost seems like like right before the third act, but it's in the first act, is the scene of Creed and Rocky watching their second fight.
Yeah.
So watching the end of Rocky 2, Apollo later says it's crazy that people care about you when you're in the ring, and when you step out, they forget you. Rocky says, maybe you ain't fighting the Russian. Maybe it's you against you. Apollo, he's getting heated. He strikes a nerve because it's true.
Yeah, like that is exactly who Apollo is fighting.
He goes, where do we go, Stallion? We're turning into regular people. You can't change who you really are. We're born with a killer instinct that you can't turn off and on like a radio. We're the warriors. Without a war to fight, we might as well be dead. There's a lot of symbolism here that, like I said, carries over between these two movies. Creed is all one-liners, and he's kind of falling back into that original Apollo Creed that we saw in the first Rocky film, where he's just having fun with it during the press conference. He's just kind of having fun and, talking smack. He's being Apollo Creed. He's kind of arrogant, but he's like a likable arrogant. He's charismatic. He's entertaining to watch. Drago doesn't say a line. He's silent. And then it kind of hints at, is this going to be a, in quote, goodwill exhibition match, which is what it's supposed to be. But the Soviets don't seem to be taking it as a goodwill exhibition match. This is, Drago's going to show that he is what's next.
This is also, the Soviets aren't in like the global professional boxing circuit. And so this is in their mind, they thought they were going to get Rocky, and instead they get this old, retired, washed up guy. So they're not happy about it at all.
Right.
And, you wouldn't be. Like, I think that's an understandable take from the Soviets, is like, okay, so we thought we were going to fight the world champion, and now we're just going to fight this dude who was world champion 5 years ago.
And we're going to talk about this a few times throughout this, but we're towards the end of the Cold War, and there's a line Apollo says to Rocky. He says, it's us against them. Mm-hmm. And then later on, Drago's wife says to Creed's wife, they're sportsmen, not soldiers. Mm-hmm. So you kind of get this symbolism of, hey, we've been in a conflict for 40 years at this point?
Yeah, pretty much. 38, I think.
So, there's still animosity. We're not killing each other, but...
Yeah, we don't like each other at all.
There's still a competition here. Okay? So, obviously, before Rocky ends the Cold War...
yeah, because,
that's true. That happened. I have evidence. Just kidding.
Obviously. Ended in a boxing ring.
So where are we kind of at in 1985 before we're going to see the Old Glory versus the Red Star? Where are we gonna be historically in real life, in reality? 1985. Where are we at? So,
if you'll remember my previous statement on the Cold War for Dr. Strangelove, that the third phase of the Cold War goes all the way from 1962 to 1979. So it is from peak nuclear apocalypse potential to de-escalation and detente. So with the election of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher in 1980 and 1979, respectively, suddenly the West is like, you know what? We should provoke the Soviet Union. Like, we should throw down. Like, it is time to end this Cold War once and for all. And they start accusing the Soviets of things that sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. Instead of painting them as simply the enemy, Reagan and Thatcher paint the Soviet Union as evil, like morally, civilly evil, an evil empire. And they start to put it not only into us versus them, but good versus evil. Like, we are the light, we are the West, and these Eastern heathens who aren't Christian and torture people and do this, that, and the other are evil empires that need to be eradicated from the face of the earth.
Interesting you say that, because Paulie has a line where he says, well, at least we don't keep our people behind walls with machine guns.
Yeah, and, to give credence to that mentality, this is also the point where Soviet power is starting to erode more so than even like NATO understands in the moment. We now know that the Politburo is filled with corruption. The Soviet economy is rapidly disintegrating in the 80s, especially the tail end of the 80s. And the Soviet military is a force, but much like the American military of the time, has never been tested. And so the 80s also sees the invasion of Afghanistan by the Soviet Union, and it is cripplingly similar to Americans in Vietnam. Like they win almost every major like conventional military engagement, and they lose and have to withdraw because they can't fight a guerrilla war against determined fanatical civilians. Sound familiar?
Right.
But you also have things like the 60s and the 70s saw some peaceful turned violent uprisings in Eastern Europe against the Soviet Union that were put down with tanks and guns and dogs and gas, as it do. So there's definitely a precedence that, as far as human rights are concerned and the right to protest and things like that, the West is definitely better than the Soviet Union. But to accuse an entire people and like an entire 13, 14 country bloc as evil is a step that has not been made to this point in the Cold War. And so Reagan and Thatcher just crank it up to an 11. And because of this, it also marks the most tense moment in the Cold War in terms of nuclear warfare since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Like, this posturing puts the U.S. and the Soviet Union at what appears to be like a dead on track for war. And it's avoided in part because Reagan and Thatcher both back off, starting in about 1984, because they're like, oh, we might actually start a nuclear war. We don't want to do that. Like, no, thank you.
So essentially the Soviet Union is kind of collapsing on itself. America's kind of backing off right at 1985. That's kind of where we are.
By 1985, it's the tail end of that era. So while the movie's being written and filmed, you are in the peak of like the Star Wars program and Reaganomics and evil empires and Soviets in Afghanistan. Like, that really fire part of "We Didn't Start the Fire," that awesome verse near the end of it, that's where you're at.
Okay, so back to the movie here. We're gonna be all American here. So we have this Soviet intruder who's come over here to face some of our greatest boxers our country can offer, and we are going to bring him from the depths up to the ring as James Brown sings "Living in America."
I don't know if he sings it so much as he just like squawks it,
screams it. And I think it's interesting that Drago rises from the depths. He comes up from the bottom, and then Creed ascends from above.
Yeah, like goes down to his level. Yeah,
like you just said with the good and evil. That made sense. Okay,
like the nationalism in this movie is both unabashed and chronic.
It's incredible. I love it. Okay, so moving on. Creed, right before he goes out, he says, "I feel born again," which shortly before, in that scene where they're watching their second fight, he told Rocky, you can't be born again. Kind of hinting at his own soon demise.
Yeah, and Rocky, there's also an important line where Rocky's looking at the fight, and Rocky is still boxing. Like, he's still the world champ.
He's a champ.
And he says, "Apollo, look at those two guys in that ring. That's not us. We can't do that anymore."
Right.
Like, we're old. Like, as far as boxers go, we're old.
So Drago, 28 minutes into the movie, is going to have his first of 9 lines of dialogue in this entire film.
You will lose.
You will lose. During the fight, the mood changes immediately the first time Drago lands a punch. And then he's going to proceed to literally throw Creed across the ring. At the end of the first round, which Drago has to be pulled away from Creed because he's fighting. He's still throwing punches after the bell.
Well, he's just pummeling him. Like, he's not even really fighting him. He's just eviscerating him.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad. But Creed in the corner looks over at Rocky and says, "Promise me you're not going to stop this fight." The crowd cheering at this, okay, so remember, like he just said before, it's like you step out of the ring and they forget your name. When you're watching this, it sounds like Drago. It sounds like they're cheering Drago, but if you look at this, if I had subtitles on, the subtitles say Apollo.
Mm-hmm.
The subtitles say Apollo. I don't think he's saying Apollo. I don't think the crowd is saying Apollo. I think the crowd is cheering for Drago.
Even if they are, if you don't catch the first syllable, Allo and Drago are, you know?
But it sounds like two syllables. It doesn't sound like three.
I just wouldn't put it past Stallone to have that be intentional. To just be like, they're cheering Apollo, but when there's 10,000 of them, it's going to sound like Drago.
Right. So, I mean, which is it really hard to say, but you got to wonder, maybe Apollo's hearing his own name. Maybe the crowd is, because he's getting eviscerated out there. He's losing. Maybe the crowd's they're saying you're done. Your time's up. Who's this new guy? I want to root for him. Maybe that's what's going on here. I don't know.
It's also clear that the crowd doesn't realize like the sledgehammer blows that are being given to Apollo Creed's face, because everybody who knows boxing in this scene is terrified the entire time, and the crowd thinks it's awesome. And this is also after we saw footage, quote unquote, in the movie of Ivan Drago hitting a test pad at 2,100 pounds per square inch.
No, I thought it was 1850.
Oh, 1850. He doesn't hit 2,100 until he's preparing to fight.
Not till later, yeah.
But 1850, so the average heavyweight is like 750.
700, yeah. So he's punching well over twice as hard as the average heavyweight boxer.
Yeah.
And Apollo has no answer for this.
I mean, do you have an answer to being hit by a freight train?
Right. One last look to his wife, and this is when I was watching this. I think Apollo knows he's going down.
I think he intentionally dies.
I think he does it on purpose.
Yeah.
And again, with the symbolism of when you step out of that ring, they forget who you are. If you die in the ring, they never forget you.
Yeah. I don't think he started out wanting to die, but I think as soon as he realized that the only way out was to give up or be pummeled into submission, he's like, I'd rather die. So he does.
Yeah, he's very proud, and he's not going to let that pride stop now.
And he's arrogant. I mean, truth be told, like, he's super duper arrogant, and arrogant people don't like to be proven that they're obsolete. So,
but the expression in his wife's eyes is like she's begging him not to do it. And he does it anyways. He goes back out. He has multiple big rights with the white towel gripped in Rocky's hand. Apollo's wife and coach begging him to stop it. A left hook connects, and Apollo goes down. And the minor convulsions when he's on the mat, bro, that's.
And he's bleeding through his nose, and you're like, "Oh, dude's dead." It's over. This
scene has been imitated and has been kind of redone so many times. There's an Ip Man sequel, I don't remember which one, where something very similar happens. It's been done over and over. And I mean, Rocky, even this movie's not the first for like the trainer to go down, and now the student has to step up. It's not the first, but damn it, this might be the best and most.
Star Wars when Vader cuts Kenobi in half, yeah,
right. But I mean, it's immediately you have right. There's no discussion. It's all in the eyes. Like, okay, so the fury in Rocky's eyes as he looks up at Drago while he's holding Apollo, and Drago just says, just mundanely, if he dies, he dies. He doesn't care. But there's no words said, and the next scene, the fight is set.
Yeah.
Because he has to.
It's also becoming like clearer and clearer, and will be revealed later in the movie, that Drago is roided out of his mind because he reacts to things like a roid ragey person, in the sense that he has no empathy, he has no emotion, he only knows anger. Like that's it. That's what he's got.
But Rocky is full of anger too.
Rocky is done. Rocky is so done that it's not even when he talks with his wife about going to Russia. Not only has he told people that he's going before he talks to her, it's not an argument. It's him telling her he's going. Like, it's not the classic will they, won't they. It's I'm going and I'm fighting this guy and either I die or he dies. But we're done.
Like in Rocky 2, he waits for her permission before he can put his mind to it. Mm-hmm. Here, he doesn't.
And in Rocky 3, he has to grapple with the fact that he is afraid after being pummeled by Clubber Lang. And in Rocky 4, he's like, I don't care.
There's no fear. He says it's for no money. It's in Russia. It's Christmas Day. Nothing matters. And he doesn't mention, like, Adrian's going to show up later, but his son doesn't mention his son until after the fight.
Nope.
Everything else in his world is gone. The only thing that matters is Drago and winning this fight. And I really think you brought up that scene where he goes home to Adrian. It kind of seems like he just signed up to go off to war.
A little bit. That's what it feels like.
It seems like he just got drafted or he just volunteered and he's ready. He's going overseas. Like he's going, he doesn't know if he's going to come back. It is like he's going to war. He's like a one-man army essentially, which but seriously though, it's very similar.
It's also important to note that shortly after the Drago fight, which is where Rocky reveals, or it's revealed that Rocky is going to Russia, the Drago Creed fight, that the Soviets reveal that they are being verbally abused and threatened with violence for the death of Apollo Creed,
right?
Which also just feeds into this, like, the Soviets are villains, because the tone of the movie is you should feel bad that fighter died, when in reality, like, let's be real. I mean, for the movie purposes, Drago killed him. Like, Drago intentionally killed him. He beat him until he died. Whatever. In real life, people die in boxing rings, and it's awful and it's bad, but that's the sport. And so but it's a good tone for the movie. You know, it's this, how dare you kill this guy in this contest.
Right. But I mean, and Creed and Rocky could have stopped the fight. It was Creed's decision not to. But at the end of round one, Creed's old coach is there and he says, "What are you doing? This is supposed to be an exhibition."
Yep.
So, I mean, you can see both sides there.
Yeah.
Yes, but I mean, Drago definitely, he came to win, and he came to win at all costs. And
Drago killed him. Like, there's no, like, Drago killed it. He didn't murder him, but he killed him. Like, he didn't care. But it's also, I think it shows it's a good Cold War interpretation, in the sense of here's the U.S. taking the Cold War moderately seriously, and here's this evil Soviet empire just constantly plotting to win in everything. And that's not it's not an accurate interpretation of what was actually happening, but it's a really accurate interpretation of that era of the Cold War in America.
Right.
Which is, we were just over here minding our own business, playing our war games that made you think we were going to nuke you, and suddenly you invade Afghanistan. How dare you?
Right.
Like, conveniently ignoring all the things that Americans do. It's like Polly with his machine gun quip, and it's like, okay, but you also have attacked black people in the streets with police dogs. So, you know. But it's a great insight into that, like, hypocrisy that all nations have in times of war, cold or otherwise.
That nationality that kind of blinds yourself to your own country's flaws.
For sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. We're going to go over to Russia, but not before one last line that I wanted to put in here. Like I said, we talked about this when in Rocky 2, Adrian finally says, win. And Rocky's ready to go. Like, that's what motivates him. She looks at him and says, "You can't win." And I feel like we talked about, everything else is gone. It's just him. It's just Drago.
And I think, although I gotta say, I think her reaction is fair, because you're like, "How, bro?" Like, you're just gonna go get killed like this.
All right, we're gonna get a music video almost smack dab in the middle of this movie. This is considered the MTV Rocky for good reason. The soundtrack is banger after banger. It's so good. It's so 80s. While my favorite song on the soundtrack is playing, and it gets almost, if not the entire length of the song here, Rocky's going to drive around in his Lamborghini.
As one does. As just an average Joe does on any given day.
So we're going to get, so the song is No Easy Way Out. If you don't know it, it's fantastic. You need to listen to it.
It's good.
It sounds better when you listen to it off the soundtrack than if you listen to like what it plays in the movie. The movie sounds as like it wasn't mastered very well, or maybe it's just a remastered version. I don't know, but it sounds better if you listen off the soundtrack. Regardless, he's going to drive around in this Lamborghini, remembering the events of the first 3 films. It's straight up an MTV music video. The car that he is driving around in is a Lamborghini Jalpa P350. It was produced for only 7 years, from 1981 to 1988. Only 410 were ever produced. Ironically, it was designed at the same time as the Lamborghini Countach, which is widely considered to be one of the most memorable and sought-after Lamborghinis. But it was designed at the same time, and it was designed to actually be a more affordable Lamborghini. It had a V8 motor, which was also the last V8 motor until I guess they started making a SUV. But it produced 255 horsepower and sold on average for about $90,000.
In the 1980s, mind you.
So,
wow.
Yeah, great little scene here, but it's just a music video with cuts from Rockies 1 through 3.
Yep.
Anyways, so they're going to fly to Russia. And Paulie, as he steps off, is going to say, "This is Russia? Don't look so tough, Rock," as he puts on his furry earmuffs.
As he's literally landing in a frozen wasteland in a 40-year-old propeller plane.
So I wanted to ask you this. Does Paulie's complaints of the living conditions second as kind of an acknowledgement of America's superior geography and living conditions?
I think it's really, I think it's just to show like how much of a loser Paulie is, honestly. But yes, it is significant because this is the time period where the living standard in the Soviet Union is lagging pretty noticeably far behind the United States. There's a good chunk there in the 50s through the early 70s where, honestly, in terms of accessibility of things and like wealth and whatnot, they're about the same. But as you get into the 80s and the Soviet economy just declines and atrophies, the distance is greater. And you see it more in the Soviet satellite states than you do in the Soviet Union itself. But Eastern Germany, not Czechoslovakia, Poland, Ukraine, these places, they're noticeably lagging behind even as early as like the late 60s. So it is kind of that joking implication of like, we have all these things and you're putting us in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. That being said, the Soviet Union had TVs, they had TV channels, but yeah, I think it's a subtle dig for sure at just the differences between the two places and the expectations of living standard between the two places, for sure.
Speaking of TVs, and we talked about this a little bit during the last one, I don't know if it was on the podcast or off the podcast, but both this and Doctor Strangelove was not allowed to be played in the Soviet Union at the time of their release.
I can understand why.
Which is very interesting. Okay. So, initiate the greatest trading sequence of all time. Fight Me. There is none better. Okay, it's literally a 2-parter. There's a part in here where he's doing what's called a dragonfly. It's where you, it's like a leg lift, except the only thing that's touching the ground is your, the back of your shoulders. And so it is like a plank, kind of, but on your back, and you lift your legs up in the air, and your entire body's straight upright, and you go as far down as you can, and then come back up. I wanted to do one in high school so bad, and I tell you, man, you got to be ripped. You've got to be so strong.
It hurt me just watching it, honestly. I was like, oh, God.
When I was like 150 pounds, it felt like 400 pounds pulling down on my legs just because of the leverage. But I think I was able to get myself down, but I could not come back up. It was like I could control the descent and slowly go down, and that was it.
I don't think I've ever been flexible enough in my entire life to even pretend to be able to do one of those.
So he's going to be doing some crazy things here.
Oh yeah.
But he's going to do all of it without any equipment. Meanwhile, Drago in his evil Soviet lair is going to be using all
Soviet
of his
Death Star,
his little Death Star flashing lights and computers to calculate how hard he can punch for some reason that's important for training.
If I didn't know better, I would swear that Sylvester Stallone just robbed like Lucas Studios of their Death Star 2 props from Return of the Jedi.
Which, in all honesty, if there was a fight at this time, wouldn't it kind of be the other way around? Like it would be we talked about how like they are at least some places in the Soviet Union, they're lagging behind. Mm-hmm. Like the United States has the resources. If anyone didn't have resources, it would be the Soviets in this situation.
Yeah, for sure. The irony is, at the time, part of the belief of the Soviet Union was that the reason their people had a lower like standard of living, or a perceived lower standard of living, was because the government had all of these top secret high tech thingamajigs. And in reality, they didn't.
Gotcha.
Like so, they did. They weren't inept, but as soon as the Soviet Union fell and records started getting released, you start to realize that, like, yes, the Soviet Union does have these massive nuclear submarines, but they also have fighter planes built in the 80s that have 1970s tech in it, and this, that, and the other. And so it's their military is very advanced, but everything else is kind of not so much by the 80s. So yeah.
So this scene is going to stop halfway through. He's going to come back from a run, and he's going to realize that Adrian is there, and she's like, "I'm here for you. I'm here for you. Whatever you need." And then he's going to pick up even more intensely. And we're going to get Hearts on Fire, which is another incredible song off this album. And we're just going to do another training sequence, just back to back. We're going to do, I consider it all one, but I mean, it's twice as hard, man. Everything he was struggling with in the first half, he's doing even more in the second half.
He lifts an entire horse cart with 3 people in it above up above his head, angles it up above his head. Jesus.
How many boxes or barrels that he's pulling off this the rope pulley. He splits
so much wood. I think the trees in the area would see him coming and be like, "Oh God, whose day is it to die? How much wood is he splitting today?" He's back.
He outruns a car. He's on top notch. And then we see Drago get a needle in his butt, and then, and so man, what else are you going to do? It's fight time, man. Let's get to it.
Meanwhile, Drago is logging like 1,800, 1,900, 2,100 PSI per punch. And you're like, Rocky, I think it's really cool that you're like breaking wood, but I think you're still going to die, honestly.
Yeah. Polly's going to give a heartfelt speech right before the fight. He's going to tell Rocky, "You're all heart, Rock." And he says, "If I could unzip myself and step out and be someone else, I'd want to be you." And then they get to the ring and Drago comes out and he goes, "You know how I said I'd want to be you? I changed my mind."
Well, because Drago comes out looking like he's been chiseled from a piece of like igneous rock.
Right. So this is arguably the leanest that Sylvester Stallone is ever going to be. So let's look at the stats here. Dolph Lundgren, at the time of playing Ivan Drago, is 6'5", 243 pounds. He's not as lean. I don't think he's as lean as Sylvester Stallone, but they've got to be within a few percentage, body fat percentage of each other. So
I think at some point I can see your abs, like you're lean enough, right?
Right. He has got to be. He can't be over 8%. If he was, I would say he was more than likely probably between 5 and 6.
And at some point in a boxing match, it's not always smart to be super duper lean.
No boxer would ever walk into a fight as lean as these guys are. But that's beside the point. So Sylvester Stallone is 5'10" at the time. Now none of this is confirmed, but at the time it's reported he weighed 173 pounds.
I believe it. He's not a very big frame. Like he's just not a big guy. He's ripped, but he's not
ripped to the bone. He's ripped to the point to where like his jaw or his cheeks are sucked in. He's so lean. Yeah. That is a 70-pound and 7-inch difference between these two fighters.
That is, if this isn't a movie, there's a whole lot of whoop coming up to Rocky's corner, man.
No kidding. Like these two aren't in the same weight class. They literally They would not be allowed to fight each other. But this is not sanctioned.
This is like the moviest movie that has ever movied. Is this fight between Rocky and Ivan?
It's good, man. It's some good stuff. Okay. Rocky's gonna go out there. We're gonna get the fight started. He's going to start taking some hits, man. He's going to start getting he's not getting beat up as bad as Creed was, but he's not doing well. He goes, I see 3 of them out there. Paulie says, hit the one in the middle. And I was thinking that Doc Holliday. I know this predates Tombstone, but that Doc Holliday where he goes, I got two guns, one for each of you.
Yep.
So I was thinking of that Doc Holliday vibes there.
And meanwhile, Apollo Creed's old coach is like, I'm going to lose another one. Here we go.
It's going to happen. So towards the end of the second round, after Rocky has taken a beating for the entirety of whatever it be, 4 minutes?
Well, after Rocky has been grabbed by the neck and punched in the face, because Drago holds him out over the ring in one hand and then smacks him across the face with the other hand.
So he's taken quite the beating. He's finally gonna land a massive blow, and he's gonna bust Drago open. Here's the thing, man. Drago gets hit. He bleeds. He looks at Rocky, and you see fear. For the first time, he makes an expression that's not stoic or angry, and it's fear. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the subtle things in here are so good.
It's really, but it's caged animal fear. It's not like it's not like runaway fear.
No.
It's like crazy fear.
Yeah, but it's like, oh my, what just happened? And you can just tell from that happening, that's never happened to him in a fight.
Yeah.
He's never been busted open. He's never been hit hard enough to be busted open. And so that's trying to kind of spell disaster for Mr. Drago here. So immediately you see the fear in his eyes, and when he gets back to his corner, Drago's going to say he's not human, he's like a piece of iron. And then Rocky's corner is going to say he's not a machine, he's a man.
Mm-hmm.
Bro,
I know.
I say I was up off the couch, shadowboxing. Elon's like, sit your dumb ass down. I'm like, you don't understand, but this gets me. It gets me. Because this guy is the epitome of the unstoppable antagonist. He is the enemy that you can't even fathom how you're going to destroy, and you just busted him open, and you see, oh my God, I can do this. And then it's going to go round after round after round. They do, again, a little montage here, almost kind of music video-esque for the rest of the fight. There is a sequence that's going to flash between the 9th and the 10th round, so I'm assuming it's the 9th round here. So in the 9th round, Drago knocks Rocky down so hard that he spits out his mouth guard. Rocky staggers to his feet, puts the mouth guard back in, and then instantly gets pummeled again by Drago.
Yep.
Just goes straight back down.
There's a really good scene in that montage where they're staring at each other from their corners, and Rocky yells at them, is like, you want more? And Drago just growls, and he's like, well, come on. And they go at each other again.
So these guys, they're giving it everything. There's nothing left. Drago is going to get angry with I call him his manager. I don't know who he really is. But he goes like, you're embarrassing us. You're embarrassing. You fight for the Soviets. And Drago pits him up with one arm and says, I fight to win for me.
And then throws the guy into the crowd.
And then final round, these guys are just they're going as hard as they can. And then finally Rocky just gets him down, takes him out, fights over.
After Duke says, this is the last round, you got to give it all you got, all your power, all your anger, all your love, like everything you got in you. Go out there and sling it. No pain.
No pain.
Which is just a lie, man. Like,
yeah.
No pain, my butt. So much pain.
So this guy, Rocky would be going straight to a hospital after this fight. They both would go straight to a hospital.
Rocky'd be dead.
So Sylvester Stallone in real life did get sent to the ICU.
Yeah.
For this, Dolph Lundgren and him had an agreement. They wanted to have the most realistic fight scene or boxing scene of all time. And Lundgren hit him hard enough that I want to say it was heart palpitations, but essentially if there was heart rhythm off, to where he was in ICU, like hooked up to heart monitors for a while.
I remember that story because Rocky said it, or Sylvester Stallone said it on like Jimmy Fallon one day, and he's like, "Yeah," and I told Dolph, I'm like, "It's okay, man. I can like I've been hit, like Carl Weathers has hit me, Mr. T's hit me. It'll be all right. Just hit me. Don't try to kill me, but hit me." And he goes and he hit me, and the next thing I remember is I'm in the ER, and I'm like, "Whoa, what happened?"
Maybe don't hit me.
Maybe that was that.
That must have been scary for. I mean, that must have been scary for Dolph Lundgren as well, because you got to think he's relatively unknown at this time, and Stallone's on top of his game.
And Dolph Lundgren's not Ivan Drago. Like, he's a human with empathy. Like, I'm sure he didn't want to kill the guy in the movie.
But anyways, I'm glad everybody was okay. But I mean, gosh dang it, did they put up a hell of a fight scene to end this movie?
Yep.
And it just makes you why Rocky 3 Rocky 3 just can't touch it. Can't touch it.
It's because Rocky 3 is just not good, dude.
I know this is Hollywood. I know this is, nationalism and patriotism, borderline propaganda, but damn it, I don't care. I love it so much. I love this movie. And he says in here,
it's well done propaganda,
So Rocky Balboa is going to end the Cold War here. He goes in here, was two guys killing each other. I guess that's better than 20 million. And then the classic line, if I can change, you can change, everybody can change.
And the crowd just roars its approval.
Right. Now, we're going to play Hearts on Fire one more time. Send them home happy. That's the end of the movie, man. I need to go lift something heavy or go throw some punches at something, because, man,
I need to go listen to a bald eagle scream.
Yeah. Top of a mountain. Drago! Which gives me, dude, I thought of the same thing. When he goes, Drago, I was like, now that's how you do it, not just Brad Pitt standing outside of a big wall going, Hector! One's intense, one's funny.
Yeah. So, what is it?
Anyways, Kyle, how did the Cold War end? What happened here?
So the Cold War actually ended by a concerted effort on behalf of NATO and the United States primarily to bankrupt the Soviet Union by convincing them to invest in more and more ludicrous and expensive military projects.
Gotcha.
Which was successful. It was also things outside of our control, in the sense that, like, the Soviet Union, as I mentioned before, is just racked with corruption. Their economic model from their satellite states is not sustainable to maintain a high standard of living in the satellite states, which then in turn means that the Soviet Union is constantly hemorrhaging money and supplies. International opinion is against them. They've split with China, so they lost a really big potential trading partner. They just become more and more isolated as well. So it's also hard in the era of the global economy, which starts during the Cold War and then becomes like the prevailing factor in like the 90s, to be an isolated country and to kind of operate in this little bubble of Eastern Europe and Russia. It's just difficult. And then to top it all off, there are four main leaders of the Soviet Union. You have Joseph Stalin to start it off. You have, and he rules for freaking forever and a day, like 20 years. You have Nikita Khrushchev, who is the 50s and then the early 60s. Then you have Leonid Brezhnev, who rules for like 15 years, I think. He kind of brings the Soviet Union back a step, which is part of what ends up bringing them down across the board. But then after his death, you have these two old and frail premiers who are in control for like a year-ish each. And then after them, you have this guy named Gorbachev, who is the last premier of the Soviet Union. And he realizes pretty quickly into his reign, so to speak, that the Soviet Union has no shot unless they change the way they do things drastically. So he opens up economic stimulus from the outside world. He opens up very, very, very basic trade with the West, and he rolls back a lot of the more oppressive policies of the Soviet Union, all of which sound good on paper, all of which directly contribute to the very quick collapse, because if you have a totalitarian, isolationist, media suppressing regime and you take all three of those things away, there's nothing left for your government to stand on. And then the Berlin Wall falls in 1989, and then by 1991, the Soviet Union is no longer a thing.
Okay, so Rocky did not end the Soviet
Rocky did
Union?
not end the Cold War. And for the record, neither did Ronald Reagan. I'm just throwing that out there. Like, no one person or one policy ended the Cold War. I would argue that Gorbachev ended the Cold War and not on purpose.
Gotcha.
Well, he ended the Cold War on purpose, but then the end of the Cold War also immediately caused the fall of the Soviet Union.
All right, so let's do two things here real quick. All right, let's do our biggest dope, biggest nope, and then I want to hear your ranking of the Rocky movies.
Okay.
And then I'll give my ranking.
I'll have to remember what
movies.
I said yesterday.
That's all right. Okay. All right. Am I going first or you going first?
Yeah, I did biggest dope first because remember I took your biggest dope and your biggest nope for Doctor
both
Strangelove.
of mine for Strangelove.
Yeah,
that's right.
All right, they're obvious.
All right, here we go. Biggest dope, easy. The training sequence. It's just incredible. I really wish, the only thing I wish we would add to it, and maybe that's my biggest nope, is that we never got an Apollo Creed training sequence at the beginning of the movie. I would have really liked that. I'm a big Apollo Creed fan. I wish we would have got that. So maybe that's my biggest nope. That wasn't planned, but that worked out perfectly. All right, Kyle. 22 seconds. You got it.
Okay. My biggest dope is the end fight scene, specifically the end round. It's just so visceral, and it hurts to watch it. It's Hollywood as heck. Like, nobody Sylvester Stallone size, tough or not, would have lasted 13 rounds with somebody Ivan Drago size, but it's amazing. Biggest nope, Paulie. Paulie is always my biggest nope. I don't, after Rocky 2, his character has no purpose. Like, there's no reason for him to be in the movies. He's just annoying and the worst. And he hates everybody, but then once every movie, he has this big emotional redemption moment that doesn't make any sense because of his character. That's my biggest nope.
Nice. That was perfect timing, too. Woo. Good job. No, I can second that one. Paulie's kind of, Paulie's pretty, he doesn't have a big, he doesn't have a big
Rocky
part.
In Rocky 2, he's like the tritagonist. Like, that's kind of his job, is to just be there and kind of fuel things. But then after that, the tritagonist is Apollo. Yeah. And then after that, they get bad. So, like, Rocky 5's awful, so he doesn't.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about what your what's your ranking? You want to do your ranking? You want to do whose ranking do you want? Let's do. Give me your bottom of the barrel, and I'll give you my bottom of the barrel.
Okay. So we're not counting the Creed movies, right? We're just counting Rocky 1 through Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, let's just do Rockies.
I haven't seen Creed 3, so
you haven't seen Creed 3?
Not yet. I need to watch
worth watching.
I like the Creed movies. Well, we'll rate those later. Right. 20 years from now, when that's history, we'll go back and rate this.
Hey, okay. The first Creed came out 9 years ago.
So my opinion. Oh my God, shut up.
I know.
My opinion of the worst Rocky movie is Rocky 5.
Rocky 5. Everyone knows that.
Not
Rocky
even
5's
close.
terrible.
Not even close. Okay, my next one, Rocky 3.
Oh, see, I wouldn't put Rocky 3 there. I'd put Rocky Balboa there.
Really? Okay.
I mean, it's good, but it's not. It's got like a couple good scenes in it. I don't know. Each of the first 4 is built off the last one, and that one just kind of seems like it's like trying to tag along on the tail end of everything.
I gotta say, main reason I don't like Rocky 3 is I have the utmost respect for Mr. T as a human being. He is an atrocious actor. He's just bad at it. He's good in the A team, and that's it.
Why don't you come over to my apartment? I'll show you what a real man looks like.
Yeah. So,
that's not the line. Oh, I totally messed up that line.
I can't with him. And then Paulie, my never-ending hatred of Paulie just seeps through that movie.
There you go.
Because to top it all off, he's also racist, as is revealed in Rocky 3.
Right.
So
I don't
Rocky
get along
3.
with these people. What is that line in Rocky 3? Oh, I don't really like these people. Well, maybe they don't like you. Well, what'd I ever do to them?
Like, why do you bring Paulie, man? Like, why? Anyway, so middle of the pack now. Yep. I'll put Rocky. I'm gonna put Rocky 2 middle of the pack for me.
All right.
It's fine. Like, it's good. It's too long. Like, it's way too long, and the part of the movie for me where Rocky is just an ignorant boob who can't do anything is too long. Like, I can't.
So,
I get it. He's useless.
This was only Sylvester Stallone's. Rocky 2 was Sylvester Stallone's second directorial movie, like the second movie he ever directed. And so, I really think with a better director, somebody, if it wasn't written and directed by Stallone, if someone would have come in and said, hey, we need to clean this up, we gotta, it's great, but you've got to watch it. If you're not a fan of Rocky and you're not a fan of what they accomplished with the first one, man, you're not gonna like it at all.
Weirdly, it felt like Godfather versus Godfather 2 in the sense that, like, to me, Rocky and Godfather 2 are like the legendary better movies of the two, and then Rocky 2 and Godfather are good. Like, I'm not arguing that they're not good.
Like they're flip-flop. Like you're talking Rocky 2 is Godfather 1.
Rocky, yeah, exactly. Like Rocky and Godfather 2 are like the iconic 1970s movies. And then Rocky 2 and The Godfather are good, but they're just kind of part of a bigger...
Damn, I need a cup of coffee to get through this damn movie is what I need.
Exactly.
Because, it is slow.
And then Rocky Balboa is my second favorite.
You skipped me. I didn't give my...
I'm sorry.
So from bottom to top, I did Rocky 5, Rocky Balboa. This is where I'd put Rocky 3.
Okay.
So Rocky 3 is my third from worst.
Interesting.
Or I guess just middle of the pack. It's in the third.
My second favorite is Rocky Balboa because it's not as iconic as like the earlier Rocky movies, but Sylvester Stallone does a really good job of writing and portraying an older, wiser Rocky.
You skipped one.
Did I?
This can't be your second favorite because you still have 1, 2, and 4.
Oh, never mind. My third favorite is Rocky Balboa.
Okay.
I can't count. I'm a historian. Because
not a mathematician.
Because Stallone does a really good job of being like an older, wiser Rocky.
Yeah. No, I like it. And that speech in Rocky Balboa is great.
Yeah.
It ain't about how hard you can get hit.
It's about how hard you can get hit and keep going.
Wait, hold on. It's not about how hard you can hit, man. I'm messing up all these lines today.
It's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can take a hit and get
keep
hit
moving
and keep
forward.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. This is where I put Rocky 2 again. Okay. Man, I get tears in my eyes every single time that scene where their son is born and he goes in, Adrian's awake, and she looks at him and goes, "Win." And I get, oh man, the whole movie builds to that moment right there, in my opinion.
Fatherhood has made you soft, Dustin.
This was before I was even a dad. It's just, man, because he cares so much about those two things. He wants to win the fight, and he wants to be a family man. But those two things don't. They're contradicting. She doesn't approve of him fighting, and then when she finally approves of it, he has nothing else holding him back, and he can give it everything he's got. Just means it just matters. I don't know. It's just I think it's a fantastic piece of filmmaking right there. So that's my number 3. So now we're at the top 2.
Number 2. Okay, top 2. My number 2 Rocky movie, though I think it is the better of the two film wise, is Rocky Balboa. Like it's slow, man. It's not as slow as Rocky 2, but it's slow.
Yeah.
And it's super 1970s. It just is. And then my favorite's Rocky 4. It's not the best one, but it's my favorite. Like,
it's not now. Okay, so I'd put a tie. I'd put a tie between the two, and I'm going to do the same thing for basically the same reason. Objectively, if I was in a film class and they were like, which one's the best? I'm obviously the first one. Not even close. But damn it, if you want me to turn up and watch a movie, then Rocky 4 is hard to beat, man. There are few movies that get you more hype than Rocky 4. And
it's like Independence Day. Like, you're aware that it's not that good of a film, but you're like, I can't help it. Like, I want it so bad.
It's like 1980s Fast and Furious, but not as cringeworthy.
Movies that make you feel like you can do things that you objectively cannot do are the best movies. So much like Independence Day makes me think that I too could fly an F-16 against an alien ship when I so clearly could not. Rocky 4 makes me feel like I could win a fight against Dolph Lundgren. Definitely couldn't.
See, I would not put Independence Day and Rocky 4 together.
I would. They're both nationalistic, like, goofy movies.
I guess so. I don't know. Whatever floats your boat, man. All right, there's our ranking that nobody asked for. So moving on, what are we gonna do next week? I don't even know if we don't even have a plan for next week.
We don't know. Next week's a surprise, guys.
I have 2 ideas. All right, and I think I can tell you in 2 words, and you could tell me what the 2 movies that I'm talking about are in 2 words. The first one's Black Cowboy.
Okay.
The second one is Mel Gibson.
Oh, man. One is The Patriot. The Mel Gibson one's The Patriot.
Right.
Black Cowboy.
Yeah.
Blazing Saddles?
No, that would be a good one. No.
Yeah, that wasn't on our list, though.
That's not about Django.
Oh, well, he's not a cowboy, Justin.
It's a Western. They're all cowboys. Same thing.
I vote that we do. That's a good question. I feel like we do Django. Well, no. Okay. Here's my question.
We're going to get to both of them. It's just which one do we want to do next week?
Well, do we do like 2 ludicrous movies back to back in the sense that like 2 like super amped like?
Which one is the ludicrous movie? Because I could argue Patriot is the ludicrous movie here.
You know, here's the worst part. Historically, The Patriot's not a whole lot better than Django.
That's what I'm saying, man.
Like, well, you guys will find out when we find out. I guess.
You find. Well, hopefully we find out before you find out, but
hopefully
we'll find out together. So
thanks for tuning in. If you tuned out halfway through the Rocky Fest, I understand.
That's okay.
I get it. That's fair.
Go watch Rocky 4.
Yes, but do not watch Rocky 5.
Do not watch Rocky 5. Binge watch the first 4 Rockies and then forget that the other ones exist.
And do yourself a favor, take a Xanax and a glass of wine when you get to Rocky 3, and all will be okay.
And then go run. Go do some cardio. Feel good about yourself, guys.
Or don't.
Or don't. Or Kyle's advice. Or don't.
Or don't. Life is too short to run.
All right. Whatever. Moving on.
Bye.
We will see y'all next week.
See you guys next week. Thunder Lips.